Today I'll be telling you a story out of The Ghost Orchid Ghost and Other Tales from the Swamp by author Doug Ultraman. And storytelling is a dying art form, and so are our Florida swamps. So join me for a spooky tale and a little conservation of Florida's wilderness. Ghost Baby. Signs marking the town where I grew up listed its founding in 1851, but everyone in my neighborhood knew of a graveyard down the old swamp road that was older than that. Weathered gravestones listed death dates in the 1830s. No one knew where these early people had come from or why they lived on a small island in the cypress swamp, but there were plenty of dry land elsewhere. Miss Johnson, my neighbor, claimed that they had been gypsies running from the law. That's what she had heard growing up, and she was over 80 years old. But Mr. Tucker at the fire station swore they had been witches. They lived in the swamp so no one would bother them, and they made potions with water moccasin venom. We weren't sure if that was just a story told to scare us or if it was true. Sometimes we'd hear strange noises coming from the swamp, mostly on calm evenings just past sunset. This was the twilight time folks called Dark 30 because it's when the spirits roamed. Some said the sounds of a moaning ghost, others thought it was more like a crying of a baby or a child. My parents said it was just the wind, a screech owl, or maybe a lonesome dog. It did sound lonesome, but it didn't sound like any dog I'd ever heard. It made me feel cold inside, even on a warm summer's night. Loggers built the roads that led through the swamps in the early 1900s. They raised it above the water by digging ditches on both sides. They put a rail line on top and hauled out the heavy cypress logs with a steam locomotive. They cut big pines off the island too, but they left the old graveyard alone, a place where cedar and pine trees stood tall. Miss Johnson said the loggers refused to camp on the island because they heard eerie sounds coming from that graveyard, especially at dark 30. It was haunted, they said. That's why they left the trees. When the loggers finished their work, they took out the rail lines and left the high rail bed to be used as a road. The old swamp road was never paved, and it became thick with soft sand during dry periods. We'd sometimes ride our bikes down to it, especially in summer, because it was just a shortcut to the city park. But we'd only ever go during the daytime. No one lived in the swamp, so there were no street lights or other lights, plus riding by the old graveyard was spooky, even in bright sunlight. We'd sometimes do it on a dare, though. One summer afternoon, my brother Dave and I rode our bikes to the city park to swim and play games. We became caught up in a ping pong tournament in the park's indoor recreation center, and by the time we stepped out, we took one look at the sunset sky and began to panic. "We have to ride back by the swamp road," said Dave. "No way," I protested. "No one goes that way this time of day. It's that or be grounded." "We added 20 minutes going the other way," David said. Without a hint of fear in his voice, I glared at him, but I knew he was right. We had only 2 weeks remaining of our summer vacation. We didn't want to spend it restricted to our house and yard. We set off riding as fast as we could. By the time we reached the swamp road, the western sky was a brilliant orange. Sometime we would have to stop to enjoy the sunset, but we knew we had to get home as soon as possible. It hadn't rained in almost a month, however, and the roads were so soft that no matter how hard we tried to pedal, we had to walk our bikes past that old graveyard. And that's when we heard the noise. "What's that?" Dave asked, stopping. "I don't know, and I don't care," I replied, feeling a sense of panic. I tried to run the soft sand, but I couldn't go very fast. It reminded me of recent dreams I had. Something was chasing me, and I couldn't run fast enough to get away. Dave followed, but he abruptly stopped again. "Listen," he said. "It sounds like someone's crying, like a baby crying." We had a younger brother, so we were familiar with babies crying, but this baby's cry was different, more desperate. "It's probably just a screech owl," I said. "Let's go." "Maybe someone left him," said Dave. He didn't move. We heard stories of people leaving babies at churches and on people's doorsteps, but never in a graveyard. Dave, being older, put his bike down and announced, "We gotta find out." "No," I said. "It's spooky." "We have to," said Dave. "The baby may need our help." I took a deep breath. The graveyard was the last place I wanted to walk into, especially at dark 30, but I reluctantly agreed. As we pushed our way through brambles and vines, past live oaks, cedar, pine, the crying grew louder. Finally, we rounded a tree and saw it. A small baby wrapped in an old blanket lying in a shallow depression. He cried louder when he saw us. "What do we do now?" I asked, petrified. "Well," said Dave, "we've got to take him home with us." "No way. Are you crazy? What will Mom and Dad say when we show up with a baby?" "We can't just leave him here," said Dave. I exhaled loudly. We had to make a decision quickly because it was getting dark. "Oh, I guess you're right." Dave was usually right, but I rarely admitted that out loud. This occasion was an exception. Dave gently reached down and picked up the baby. Immediately, the baby stopped crying and started doing a cooing noise. Dave managed to smile. "He's kind of cute," he said. "Or maybe he is a she," I checked and announced. "He's a he." He gave him to me to hold. Surprisingly, the baby was much lighter than our younger brother. although they appeared to be the same age, maybe 4 or 5 months old. I wonder how long he's been out here, I said nervously, looking around. It wasn't a place where I wanted to hang out. Deep shadows stretched beneath moss-drenched branches. Tree frogs and cicadas called out in rhythmic choruses, creating a strange pulsing noise like a loud heartbeat. Mosquitoes buzzed in my ear. We better go, said Dave. We started towards the road. Maybe I was more tired than ever, but the baby seemed to be getting heavier with every step. Hey, Dave, you carry him, I said. My arms are hurting. Dave smirked. We haven't even gone 50 feet. He reluctantly took the baby. He only had made it about another 20 feet before he started complaining. Gee, you're right. This baby is getting pretty heavy. In another moment, we were both carrying the baby. Dave cradled the head and upper back while I held the legs and butt. The baby now weighed more than our German Shepherd at home. This was getting weird. I glanced down at the baby and nearly dropped him in the road. Dave, I stuttered. Look. Dave looked down and nearly dropped his end of the baby. Smiling up at us was no longer the face of a baby, but of an old man, gray-haired and wrinkled. What do we do now? I whispered, stiff with fear. We have to take him back, Dave whispered back. Dave always seemed to have the answer for everything, and I admired him for that and was a little envious, but Dave didn't always give good reasons for his answers, and this was one of those times. How come, I asked. How come what? How come we have to take him back? My voice shook. I didn't want to return to that spooky graveyard. Dave's voice lowered even more to where I could barely hear him. I think he's a ghost baby, he said. If we leave him in the road, there's no telling what may happen. I'm not sure what had suddenly made Dave the ghost expert, but strangely, his answer made sense. We reluctantly turned around and headed back towards the graveyard. As we did, the baby became lighter and the old man's face returned to that of a baby. Near dark, when we finally laid the baby back down on what must have been the shallow depression of his grave, he started crying again. What do we do now? I asked, panicked. I felt like crying too. For the first time, a frightened look came across Dave's face. Let's get the hell out of here, he said. He didn't need to say it twice. We ran out of the graveyard, tripping over headstones and falling into bush. When we reached the sandy road, we ran right past our bikes and kept going. Arriving home breathless and well past dark, we burst through the door and gave Mom and Dad the whole story in about 15 seconds. It wasn't fun being grounded for the last 2 weeks of summer vacation, but we now knew the source of that lonely cry that crept through the night air like swamp fog.